Welcome the timeless forgotten mystery. After almost 16 long hours of journey, the train finally arrived at Udaipur station. Kabir, Ria, Arjun, and Seema, four inseparable childhood friends, had been planning this Rajasthan trip for months, and now they were finally here for their 5-day adventure. Kabir and Ria were a couple, and this was their first trip together, while Arjun and Seema were in full-on fun mode, determined to make every moment count. They checked into a beautiful heritage-style hotel near the old city, whose windows opened to narrow lanes filled with thousands of tourists, local shops, and the lively charm of Udaipur. That evening, the group explored the markets, mesmerized by traditional musicians, dancers in silver anklets, and colorful Rajasthani puppets. Amid the crowd, Seema suddenly felt that an old woman was staring directly at him. When he turned back to confirm, she was gone. Brushing it off as imagination, he continued walking with his friends. The next morning, they met their guide, Bhupendra Singh, a tall, mustached man who promised to show them the true glory of Udaipur. Their first destination was the famous Lake Pichola. As they boarded a small wooden boat, Bhupendra took the oar and began rowing across the sparkling lake, pointing toward the majestic white marble palaces that seemed to float on the water's surface. Suddenly, Arjun noticed something unusual, a small platform-like structure in the middle of the lake. Pointing toward it, he asked Bhupendra what it was. The guide's expression changed immediately. He explained that the spot was an ancient ghat, largely forgotten by locals, and centuries ago, a woman had died there, cursing Udaipur with her last breath. Curious, the friends urged him to tell them the whole story. Bhupendra sighed and began narrating. This is the story of a dancer, a Natni, whose name still haunts these waters. He asked, "You must have heard the tales of Rajasthan's kings and queens, haven't you?" Kabir nodded. Of course, every guide tells us stories of battles, palaces, and royal love. Smiling faintly, Bhupendra said, "But this story isn't in any book. 200 years ago, Udaipur was ruled by Maharana Jawan Singh. In those days, many from the Nat community lived here, acrobats and rope walkers who entertained the royal courts. Among them, the most beautiful and talented was Gal, known as Gal Ki Natni. Her grace and courage had made her famous across the kingdom." Bhupendra continued, his tone turning darker. One night, a drunken Maharana challenged Gal Ki Natni. He promised her half his kingdom if she could walk across Lake Pichola on a rope. Gal accepted without fear. The next morning, a thick rope was tied from one end of the lake to the other, and thousands gathered to watch. With elegant balance and confidence, Gal began her walk. The crowd cheered louder with every step. When she was halfway across, the royal ministers panicked. If she succeeded, the king would lose half his empire. So, they secretly ordered the rope to be cut. Gal fell into the cold waters and drowned. But before her final breath, she cursed Udaipur. No king would ever be able to pass his throne to his son. His heir would die young or become unworthy to rule. That curse, Bhupendra whispered, still lingers over Udaipur's royal bloodline. The story left the friends silent and uneasy. A chill swept over the lake, and Ria instinctively rubbed her arms. Trying to laugh it off, Arjun said, "It's just a story, right? There's no real curse on tourists." But Bhupendra's face remained serious. "Her spirit still roams," he said. "They say she punishes those who disrespect women. That's why, in Udaipur, outsiders are warned never to call women to their rooms at night, for sometimes it's the Natni herself who comes knocking." The friends chuckled, dismissing it as a local superstition, and Bhupendra could tell they didn't believe a word. That night, back at the hotel, they discussed the legend again. Ria laughed, saying every city has ghost stories made up to attract tourists. Later, they sat in the garden cafe for dinner and drinks. After a few glasses, Bhupendra's tale was long forgotten. Arjun leaned back and said, "Are we really just going to visit palaces and temples? Let's do something thrilling." Seema raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Arjun smirked. "You know what I mean, the kind of things guys remember from trips forever." The others laughed, thinking he was joking. But later, when Kabir and Ria retired to their room, Arjun turned serious. "Just one night," he said to Seema. "No one will know, and it'll make this trip unforgettable." Seema hesitated. Bhupendra's warning echoed in his head. But Arjun, still drunk, insisted. They looked up a number online, made a call, and fixed the price. The woman on the phone said she'd arrive in 30 minutes. At midnight, Udaipur's lanes were silent. Then, 3 slow knocks echoed on their door. Grinning, Arjun opened it, but froze. A woman stood there, draped in deep red traditional attire, her face hidden completely under a long veil. She neither smiled nor spoke. On her ankles were old rusted anklets that clinked faintly with every step. "Come in," Arjun said nervously. She entered silently and stood still in the center of the room. The air grew cold. Seema whispered, "She didn't sound this old on the phone." Arjun chuckled awkwardly. Maybe she's just shy. Then, she lifted her head slightly. Seema noticed her dark red lips and an unnatural blue hue on her skin, as if she had been underwater for years. In a slow, echoing voice, she said, "You called me." Seema stammered, "What's your name?" Turning her head toward him, she whispered, "Once, I had many names, but now, they call me the Natni." Arjun's smile vanished instantly. The lights flickered and went out. The sound of anklets filled the room, though the woman hadn't moved an inch. Arjun shouted, "Is this some kind of prank?" Seema, trembling, backed into a corner. The woman lifted her veil. Half her face was decayed, shriveled like something long drowned. In a deep, haunting voice, she said, "You laugh at stories, but stories are born from truth." Arjun begged her to stop, but she suddenly turned toward him, her mouth opening unnaturally wide. Arjun gasped, clutching his throat as if he were drowning in midair. Seema screamed, trying to pull him away, but Arjun's breath stopped. The woman's eyes glowed red as Seema shouted helplessly. Hearing the commotion, Kabir and Ria rushed to their door and knocked desperately, but no one opened. From inside, they heard Seema's muffled voice, "Kabir, help us." They tried to break the door, but it wouldn't budge. 10 minutes passed before the lock finally clicked open. A stench of rotten water filled the air. Inside, everything was wet. Seema sat trembling in a corner, his body limp, unable to speak. On the bed lay Arjun, motionless, his eyes open but lifeless. Then came the faint chime of anklets again, from the dark corner of the room. Seema screamed once more, then fell silent. Kabir and Ria rushed out in horror, finding Bhupendra sitting quietly near a tree in the hotel garden. Without looking up, he murmured, "I warned you. But you didn't listen." Kneeling on the ground, Kabir broke down, while Ria looked toward Lake Pichola. Her trembling hand clutched Kabir's tightly as she whispered his name. There, under the moonlight, they saw her, a woman walking calmly on the water's surface, her anklets ringing through the night. The story ends there. If you found this video gripping, make sure to like it and share it with your friends. Tell me in the comments which part of Rajasthan you're watching from. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. For the next story, check out our video on the mysterious truths of the haunted Bangor Fort. Find out why it's called the most haunted place in India. I'll see you in the next episode.